Ever feel stuck? Like you're hitting the same wall over and over again?
It's a pretty universal feeling, right?
Totally. And get this, turns out it's an ancient problem too. Today's deep dive, we're going way back to ancient Egypt for a story about power struggles, stubbornness, and finding a way out of, well, a metaphorical desert.
We're talking about the book of Exodus, chapters 8 through 11 to be exact, the power dynamics at play between God and Pharaoh. Intense.
So just to set the scene for our listeners who might not have cracked open Exodus since, well, Sunday school, we're talking about the Israelites enslaved in Egypt. God sends Moses to tell Pharaoh to let his people go, and Pharaoh's response is,
Not exactly a resounding yes.
to put it mildly, he basically says, nope, not happening, and that's when things really kick off.
That they do. Cue the plagues, each one more dramatic than the last. I mean, we're talking the Nile turning into blood.
Frogs.
Everywhere. Lice, flies, you name it, Egypt was dealing with it.
It's like God was upping the ante each time, sending a message that was impossible to ignore. But more than just these big, dramatic displays of power, I'm fascinated by the strategy behind them. God wasn't just unleashing random chaos.
No, not at all. These were targeted strikes, each one aimed at a specific Egyptian deity.
Like turning the Nile into blood. A direct challenge to Hapi, the god of the Nile's fertility.
Precisely. Each plague chipped away at Pharaoh's authority and the Egyptian people's faith in their gods. This was about demonstrating who truly held ultimate power.
Yet, you see Pharaoh, even as the plagues are literally raining down around him, clinging to his power. It's almost like he couldn't see a way out, even as the walls were closing in.
There's a real human element to that, don't you think? This resistance to change, the fear of the unknown, even when deep down we know it might be for the best.
And that takes us to Moses. He's caught in the middle of this epic power struggle. The weight of God's message on one hand, Pharaoh's fury on the other. What do you think enabled him to stand strong despite all the pressure?
Well, if we look at the text, it seems like his faith played a huge role. He trusted God even when things looked bleak, even when it seemed like Pharaoh would never budge.
He must have been tempted to just throw in the towel, to say, this is impossible.
Oh, absolutely, but he persevered. And then, just when you think the story can't get any more intense, the darkness descends.
This is one of the most vivid parts of this story. 3 days, complete darkness. It's almost like a physical manifestation of what was happening in Pharaoh's heart, wouldn't you say?
Yes, a powerful image of what happens when we close ourselves off, when we refuse to see beyond our own limited perspective.
So how do we connect this ancient story to our lives today? I mean, we're not facing literal plagues of frogs or locusts.
True, but the core message is timeless. Think about the things in your own life that feel like plagues, the fears that hold you back, the bad habits that are hard to break, the situations that seem impossible to escape. What are your own pharaohs?
It's about recognizing those things, those patterns, and making a conscious choice to move towards freedom, even when it's hard.
The story of Exodus reminds us that we don't have to be defined by those things. There's always a glimmer of hope, a path forward, even if we can't see it yet.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you were standing in Moses' sandals, facing that kind of resistance, what would you do?
It definitely makes you think.
It certainly does. And on that note, we'll leave our listeners with that thought. Until next time, keep seeking those glimmers of hope. And remember, no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way out.